Night-choked kings landing with smoke and green fire. The bells of the great September tolled in panicked discord, ringing half-melted notes that blew eastward on the hot wind. Sandor Clegane tasted copper on his tongue. Blood, maybe his own, though he felt no wound. The deck beneath his boots lurched again as another of the Hand's ships split on the river, spilling wildfire in a blossom of emerald fury. Men screamed. Men always screamed. He turned from the mud-spattered balustrade and shoved through a knot of gold cloaks who had once laughed at the Hound's face. They gave way now, eyes wide as children before a whipping. Clegane felt the glow behind him, heat licking like dragon's breath across his burns. He thought of the Blackwater, of ships aflame and soldiers drowning, but mostly he thought of fire. Every tendon inside him tightened, yet not enough to turn him away from the promise he had made to no one but himself. Sansa Stark would die here if he left her. Joffrey's plaything, Cersei's puppet, a pale dove in a golden cage. If the city burned, the noble would roast first, and no Septon's blessing would mend her. So he pushed on, one mailed fist cracking a wooden door, splinters falling like snow. He vaulted a stair 2 steps at a time, boots clanging, cloak whipping behind him like a banner of storm clouds. At the solar he paused. Torches guttered in iron sconces, casting jagged shadows across the lion-carved door. He heard sobbing beyond, soft as a prayer. The breath touched something inside him he hated to name. He kicked the door inward. Sansa spun from the window. Her hands clutched the skirts of a gown too fine for war, ivory silk now smirched with ash. She had been watching the river, a girl frozen in the act of weeping for men she would never meet. Little bird. His voice sounded rough as gravel. Come. She stared, blue eyes wide. Ser Sandor? Not a knight, he growled, though the correction felt hollow tonight. Grab your cloak. We're leaving. The castle shook again. Distant. A boom rolled across the ramparts like the roar of a wounded god. Sansa glanced toward the sound. My lady mother taught me to stay where my queen commands. Your queen's half mad with fear and wine. You stay here, you die screaming while she empties her last flagon. He stepped forward. She took a step back. I'm no hero, girl. I'm tired of fire and of kings. I'm leaving this charnel house, and I'm giving you one chance to walk out behind me. Her gaze dropped to the dagger at his hip, then to the gloved hand he extended. He could not recall offering anyone a hand without a weapon in it. That thought surprised him almost as much as the sight of her slipping fingers into his palm. The Hound pulled her close. Keep silent, keep close, and keep eyes forward. If you look back, you'll freeze. She swallowed. He felt the tremor run through her arm. Yet she nodded, jaw set with a northern steel he had underestimated. They stepped into the corridor. Smoke gathered near the ceiling like a dark tide. Guards fled every which way. Some toward the steps, others toward the wine cellars, a few simply kneeling at cracked stones, praying for a god's mercy none would grant. Sandor kept Sansa tucked behind his broad frame, carving a path. He did not need his sword. The burnt half of his face parted bodies quicker than sharp steel. When they reached the courtyard, heat lashed his exposed flesh so fierce he staggered. A trebuchet arm smoldered nearby, its ropes snapping like snakes. The stench of burning pitch mixed with the distinctive sour tang of wildfire. Above the city wall, blossoms of viridian flame burst and died, casting ghastly shadows upon the towers. Horses screamed in the stables. Somewhere a child cried for a mother. Sandor's world narrowed to Sansa's breath against his shoulder and the weight of his own pounding heart. They crossed the drawbridge just as a thunderclap split the night. Another ship exploding. The shockwave ricocheted along the curtain walls. Masonry rained. A crenel stone smashed where they had stood a heartbeat before. Sansa gasped. He bent and half-dragged, half-carried her under the arch. On the other side, the torchlit path sloped toward the postern gate, his chosen way out. 2 Kingsguard blocked it, Ser Boros Blunt and Ser Meryn Trant, armor gleaming dull bronze in the firelight. Trant sneered, sword already in hand. Going somewhere, dog? Away from this dung heap. Sandor said. The girl stays, Blunt puffed, cheeks red with exertion or wine. Sansa trembled. Sandor felt it and chafed at the world that made her fear these soft men more than him. He stepped between her and them. You want her? He asked. Come take her. Trant laughed, but uncertainty flickered across his eyes. The Hound spat at the ground, then drew steel in a hiss of iron. For a moment nothing moved, only the soft sizzle of dwindling torches. Then Trant lunged. Sandor met the thrust with a parry that sent shock through his arm. He pivoted, blade sliding along Trant's guard, twisting until he felt the notch where their swords locked. With a jerk he yanked Trant forward, then slammed a mailed fist into the Kingsguard's visor. Bone crunched. Trant reeled, helm askew, blood pouring from a busted nose. Boros Blunt stepped in, but too slow. Sandor kicked him in the gut, sending him doubling over. He swung at Trant's collar, the blade biting through gilded steel into flesh. Trant fell gurgling. Blunt crawled, wheezing. Sansa turned her face, lips pressed. The gate yawned beyond. Sandor scooped Sansa under one arm and pulled. They stumbled into the night and left the clangor behind. They found a horse tied near the wharf, its handler nowhere in sight. It danced skittish at the smell of smoke. Sandor vaulted into the saddle, then reached down to haul Sansa up before him. The night air on the riverbank felt cooler, laced with salt and ash. Behind them, the red keep glowed like a kiln. A singular roar rose from the city as Lannister men cheered, perhaps a victory cry, perhaps despair. Sandor set heels to the horses' flanks. They galloped into the maze of streets, hooves sparking stone. The river gate had been flung wide for panicked small folk to flee. Beyond, campfires smoldered among makeshift tents abandoned when Stannis' fleet appeared. Sandor angled west, aiming for the King's Road where it met the river. If they could reach the Rose Road by dawn, the girl might live to see Highgarden or Old Town, or somewhere that did not stink of lion and flame. Sansa held tight to the rings of his hauberk. He felt her breath on his neck. "Thank you," she whispered, so faint he nearly missed it. He grunted. Words were smoke, deeds were stone. He urged the horse on. Hours passed in a blur of broken moonlight through trees. The city's glow faded behind them, replaced by the hush of nocturnal forest. An owl's low question, the rustle of unseen things. Sansa slumped in exhaustion. Sandor reined in near a brook. He dismounted and lifted her down. She swayed, but caught herself. Ash smeared her cheek. "I have never ridden so fast," she said, voice raw. "Rest. Drink." He handed her a water skin. She tilted it to her lips and drank greedily. Then she knelt to wash soot from her face. In moon reflection her hair looked silver as ice. Sandor watched until discomfort pricked. He turned away, checking the trees for eyes. None, yet he knew men hunted here. Deserters, wolves in man-flesh. When she finished, Sansa returned the skin. "Where will we go?" "North, if the gods smile and we're fools," he said. "Or south, where wars are fewer. My home is Winterfell. Your home is ashes under a northern sky ruled by Ironborn. Last I heard." He softened no word. "Better to aim for Riverrun. Tullis still hold the trident." Her chin lifted. "My uncle Ser Edmure would protect us." "Protect you," Sandor corrected. "I need no protection." The brook gurgled between them, Sansa's gaze fixed on the ripples. "Why help me?" He thought of fire, of the red keep's hall of 1,000 candles, of a child screaming while his brother's hand held him to the flame. He shrugged. "Hate the smell of burning flesh. Yours would stink same as any." Her hand touched his forearm, a light bird-like brush. "Still, I thank you." He shifted, clearing his throat. "Sleep. Dawn soon enough." He gathered deadfall for a small fire. Sparks leapt, and for a moment wild fear seized him. But the flames were small, tame, nothing like wildfire. He allowed them. Sansa lay on a bed of moss, cloak pulled tight. She slept. Sandor kept watch. The quiet gnawed at him, more unnerving than battle screams. For the first time in long memory, He wondered what came next when no lord commanded his sword. He listened to Sansa's breathing, steady as tide against stone, and wondered if a broken dog could guard a broken bird until both found sky. They rode at dawn, dew diamonding the grass. Through tangled hedgerows they passed farms left fallow, chickens pecking empty yards, no owners in sight. War had swallowed the Reach's northern rim just enough to leave silence. By mid-morning they reached an inn called the Peachwood Cross, its sign split by a recent axe blow. Sandor smelled hot bread. Hunger drove them inside. Within, a single girl served stale beer. She flinched at the Hound's visage but took his coin quickly. They ate in a corner brown bread, hard cheese, a thin stew laced with carrot. Sansa ate daintily, though her eyes betrayed fierce hunger. After, Sandor purchased cloaks of coarse wool, one dark for him, one dyed soft green for her, colors of no house. He sheared her auburn hair to shoulder length with a dagger, each strand falling like red silk. Tears shone, but she did not object. "Mother used to trim my hair by the gods' wood," she murmured. He said nothing, but tied the locks in a bundle and placed them in her palm. "Keep, for ghosts." They left the inn at noon and skirted the road when patrols thundered past. Lannister colors, then men with red stags upon blue, survivors of Stannis retreating south. Once, a band of outlaws blocked their path, 5 men armed with rusty spears. Sandor dismounted, drew his sword, and advanced wordless. They fled at the first growl. That night they camped by a ruined September moonlight streamed through broken glass windows, tracing rainbows on cracked marble. Sansa knelt among fallen columns, whispering prayers for the dead of King's Landing, for her family, for the men on both fleets. Sandor leaned against a pillar, listening. Her faith puzzled him, soft words to deaf gods, yet soothed as a lullaby. Before sleep, he handed her a dagger. "I cannot," she whispered. "You can. You must." He placed the hilt in her fingers, closing them. "If I fall, if anyone else tries to take you, stab for belly. Twist." She shivered, but nodded. "Good. Sleep." He remained awake long after, staring at the pale ghost of firelight on the horizon. He wondered if the Blackwater still burned. Days blurred. Ride, hide, eat little, sleep less. The riverlands unfolded as a tapestry scorched at the edges. Villages torched by raiders, bridges collapsed, fields salted with corpses. Rumors swirled on every wind. Stannis defeated, Renly's ghost seen, Robb Stark marching on the crag, Tywin retreating to Harrenhal, dragons hatched far overseas. Sandor ignored them all. Sansa hardened. She learned to saddle the horse, to start a cookfire with flint, to keep watch without drifting. Her eyes lost some of their innocence but gained a northern clarity, like winter water that would cut if one touched too quickly. Sandor caught pride blooming in his chest and crushed it each time. One twilight they reached an abandoned manor perched above the tumblestone. Ivy wrapped shuttered windows. The gate hung askew. Sandor inspected for traps, found none. Inside, a great hall slept under tarps drawn across the roof's gaping wound. They decided to stay the storm night predicted by the clouds. Sansa explored. In the solar she found a dusty harp missing 2 strings. She brushed it clean, sat by a window, and plucked a tentative chord. Sandor watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "My father said music is the soul's memory," she said. She adjusted tension on a string and tried another note. It rang warm. "No music in Clegane lands," he muttered. "Then perhaps we make some here." She began a simple northern lullaby. The notes wavered but held. Rain pattered on the cracked slate above, joining harmony. Sandor felt something twist inside, nostalgia for nothing he owned. When she finished, he cleared his throat. "Good enough." She smiled, small but genuine. "Will you sing?" The notion startled him to a scoff. "Dogs howl. They don't sing." "Then howl for me." Her tone was playful, a spark amid gloom. He almost refused, but the storm rumble outside coaxed a memory. The song his mother sang before she died, before Gregor stole everything gentle. Sandor rasped a verse, voice rough, words half-remembered. It told of a stone dog guarding a maiden made of snow, refusing fire until spring returned. The tune cracked but persisted. When he finished, Sansa stared, eyes bright. "Thank you." He frowned and left before she saw his confusion. The next morning sun rose on silver clouds. They crossed the tumblestone by a ferry abandoned at its moor. On the far side, riders in direwolf cloaks appeared, Northmen, banners of House Tallheart and House Glover. Sandor's hand found his sword, but Sansa rode ahead. "I am Sansa Stark of Winterfell," she called. Her voice carried like tower bells across water. "Daughter of Lord Eddard Stark." The riders reigned. Their captain, a bearded man with scars, studied her. Lady Sansa vanished in King's Landing months past. Some say she wed the imp. I did not. The tremor in her tone belied steel beneath. Ser Sandor Clegane brought me safely from the Red Keep during the siege. The man's gaze shifted to the Hound. Suspicion flared, but he bowed in saddle. "If you are my lady, we'll see you to Riverrun. Lord Edmure holds the castle yet." Sandor said nothing. He felt the choice draw near, the parting he had foreseen since that night of green fire. They rode with the Northmen in wary silence. Sansa gave the Hound sidelong glances, perhaps fearing he would vanish. He kept his eyes on the road, mind on the dream that had visited him in the broken manor. A mountain on fire, a hound leaping through flame to drag a snow-white bird skyward. By dusk, Riverrun's towers broke the horizon, banners snapping crimson and blue. The castle sat between rivers like a stone ship ready to sail. Soldiers cheered upon seeing a Stark girl alive. Horns sounded. In the courtyard, Ser Edmure himself met them, mustache twitching. Tears shone when he beheld his niece. He embraced her, commanded chambers prepared, food and bath drawn. Sansa turned to Sandor amid the bustle. "Will you not come inside?" He shook his head. "Castles and I don't mix." She stepped closer, reached for his hand. "You saved my life." He shrugged. "A dog finds a bone, no valor in it. Then let me honor the dog who found me." He saw then she would not be that dove transfixed by fear ever again. She was Tully and Stark both, molded by hardship. He bent, awkward, and pressed something into her palm. The lock of her hair tied by a strip of leather. She gasped softly. "Keep your ghosts," he said. "They're kinder than men." She closed fingers around the keepsake. "Will I see you again?" "If the world's kind." He managed a crooked grin. "But it never is." Yet when he turned for the gate, he felt eyes on his back like warmth. He mounted and rode west, into the pink smear of sunset, away from rivers and keeps and songs. Sandor Clegane did not vanish as some songs later claimed. He hunted Sellswords, raiding villages north of the Twins, and slew half of them in pitched battle beneath an ash tree blackened by wildfire blown far from the Blackwater. Rumor whispered of a burnt knight on a great chestnut horse, sword half-rusted, cloak torn, who asked only if they harmed girls. Those who answered wrongly bled upon the roots. At Riverrun, Sansa bathed, wept, and dressed in grey wool trim with Tully blue. She spoke before Edmure and the Blackfish Brinden of what she had seen. Wildfire, madness, the Hound's rescue. Ravens flew north and west, seeking Robb Stark, telling that his sister lived. The months to come would test them both, girl and dog, maiden and wolf, knight who was no knight. But on that first night of safety, Sansa stood upon parapets under a sky free of fire and whispered thanks to the Seven and the old gods alike, and to the strange new god that might watch over burned men with kind eyes. Far down river, Sandor camped alone, a small flame flickering at his feet. He stared at it long, but tonight it did not frighten him. He imagined a stone dog carved at gate of Riverrun, forever guarding a bird of snow. In the quiet between heartbeats, he dared to think the song might end differently this time. The fire popped. Sparks rose, drifted, and vanished like memory. He let them go, then lay down, sword across his chest, and dreamt for the first time in years. Not of flame, but of a dove learning to fly. Night's edge surrendered to the faint rose light of dawn, and Sandor Clegane awoke beneath the whispering leaves of an ash tree blackened by old wildfire. The campfire at his feet had guttered to pale ghosts of coals. Mist threaded the low ground where the tumblestone curved like a silver blade, and the dog that was no night lay still, listening. The forest breathed, an owl settling, a squirrel's quick scurry, the distant croak of a marsh heron. No hoofbeats yet, no clash of steel, no screams. A peaceful morning then, he thought, and almost laughed at the strangeness of calling any morning peaceful. He rolled to his feet, joints aching from a night on stone. His chestnut gelding, stranger, cropped grass nearby, ears flicking at gnats. Sandor checked saddle cinches, tugged the worn girth strap, and frowned at the fraying leather. It would need mending soon. If he meant to ride far, he would need more than a sword and an old horse. He would need coin, food, stitching needles, a new whetstone. Riverrun had those things, Riverrun, and the quiet girl he had escorted to its gates. Sansa Stark was safe behind thick walls now, guarded by uncles and Blackfish, by river and moat. He had done his part. Yet dawn's ice kissed his burnt cheek, and he found himself glancing southeast as though her voice might drift on the breeze. Fool dog, she has lords enough to fetch her bread. Still, memory nagged. The look on her face in the courtyard when they parted. Some blend of relief and grief, as though she gave up a part of herself when he turned away. He grunted, swung into the saddle, and wheeled stranger north toward the villages that lay beneath the twins. Raiders had harried those lands last he heard. Raiders meant victims, and victims meant coin for a sword arm, or at least meat for a hungry dog. The gelding trotted through dew-flecked grass. Crows circled over a broken cart on the road ahead, wings beating the hush. Sandor nudged stranger closer. 2 oxen lay dead in their traces, throats cut. The cart bed had been ransacked, flour sacks ripped, bolts of rough spun slashed, 3 small kegs split to leaking foam. No corpses of men or women, which meant the raiders had taken their spoils alive. He cursed under breath. The tracks pointed east, shallow ruts from wagon wheels, hoofprints of a half-dozen horses. He turned stranger and followed, mind ticking through the odds. 6 men, maybe more, if they were Dr. Unk on stolen ale, surprise would even the number. Stranger snorted, as if objecting to the plan. Better I risk steel than some farmer girl screaming, Sandor muttered, and urged the gelding into a canter. 3 miles on, smoke spidered above the treeline. He slowed, tied stranger in a thicket, and crept the last 100 yards on foot. A low stone barn sat by a muddy clearing, moss on its roof shingles. The raiders had built a fire pit and were roasting a pig, laughter rolling like dice. 5 men lounged on ale kegs. A 6th hauled water from a well. 2 figures huddled near the barn wall, girls. Wrists bound, dresses torn at the hem. One clutched the other, eyes blank. Sandor unsheathed his sword. He circled wide, using the barn as cover.
No dogsbarkt. Lucky.
He crouched behind a stack of split logs, gauging distance. One raider wandered aside to piss. Sandor rose, closed the ground in 3 strides, and drove steel clean through the man's spine. A wet gargle, then silence. The others turned at the thud. He rushed them before shock became sense. His blade arced, taking the hand off a spearman who fumbled for his shaft. A mace swung at his helmet. He ducked, felt iron whistle above, rammed his shoulder into the attacker's gut, and hewed upward under the ribs. 2 down. The pig crashed into the fire, sparks spiraling. Someone shrieked. He recognized the voice of a boy no older than 14, blade trembling in grip too big for his fingers. Sandor shoved him aside and met the largest of the men. Broad-shouldered, a battered kettle helm, sword nicked from poor honing. They danced among embers.
Stilran.
The big man jabbed, clumsy. Sandor knocked the blow wide, stepped inside, and kicked the raider's knee backward with a crunch. The man roared, fell, tried to crawl, and Sandor ended it with a downward stroke to the neck. Blood hissed on coals. The last 2 broke, fleeing toward their horses. Sandor threw his sword, spinning, the pommel striking one between the shoulder blades, toppling him. The other vaulted astride and bolted. Sandor retrieved his sword, thought of chase, then let the coward ride. Men who ran lived to spread fear of the burnt dog. That rumor was coin enough. He cut the captive's ropes. One was near 16, yellow hair plastered to her cheek. The other perhaps 12, a skein of dark curls. They stared at him, burnt face, red-smeared blade, and shrank back. "You're safe," he rasped. "Go home." The elder girl found voice. "They burned our farm." Sandor sighed. "Fates will keep turning. Then find another. Riverrun's gates are open to small folk. Ask for the Tullus. Say a hound sent you." He tossed them a pouch taken from the big man's belt. 12 silver stags clinking. Enough for bread and passage. As they hurried down the road, Sandor cleaned his blade on a dead man's cloak, then rolled the corpses into the fire pit. No time for graves. Crows would feast. He mounted Stranger and rode on. Within Riverrun's halls, Sansa Stark walked a corridor paneled in polished birch and felt the tug of eyes. Guards, servants, small folk refugees. They all stared as she passed, murmuring Lady Stark with wonder. She forced a polite nod, though inside her stomach coiled. So quickly she had become symbol, not girl. The wolf maiden rescued from the lion's den. She reached the solar where Ser Brinden rivers, austere, hawk-eyed, waited. Maps sprawled across a long oak table. River crossings marked, supply lines sketched in charcoal, red pins clustering round Harrenhal. Edmure sat hunched, chewing a quill, ink smudged on his thumb. They rose at her entrance. The Blackfish bowed. "Niece, we discuss the crown's demands." A raven came at dawn. "Lannister terms?" she asked. "Tywin insists on your return to King's Landing," Edmure said, voice tight. "He calls it a good faith measure." Sansa's pulse thudded. Chains shimmered in memory. Meryn Trant's leer, Cersei's cold smile, Joffrey's crossbow. "I will not go back." "And you shall not," Brinden answered. "Your brother is king in the north and must consent to any such handover. We will stall Tywin while Robb replies." Edmure laid a hand on her shoulder. "You are safe here, Sansa. We vow it." She managed gratitude, though fear lingered. Safe for now. War twist could shift tomorrow. Later she sat beneath a weeping willow on Riverrun's island ward, listening to river song. She sketched in a bound book, a habit reawakened by quiet moments. Today she drew Sandor Clegane. She began with the scarred profile, the heavy brow, the eyes that flashed anger and something gentler beneath. But her charcoal strokes softened the scars, easing the burn into lines of wind-swept rock. She frowned and smudged, trying to recall exactness. Was the scar that shallow near his temple? Did his hair fall left or right? She had watched him nightly on the road, yet now details eluded her. She closed the book, unsettled that memory already blurred. "Lady Sansa?" She rose. Maester Vyman waited, letter in hand sealed with direwolf wax. The raven from Robb. She broke the seal, eyes darting. Her brother's script, bold, hurried, said, "Sansa, I spill ink with trembling joy. Our house endures. Stay at Riverrun under Edmure's guard. I march for the Westerlands. When victory is ours, we will bring you home. Trust none who bear a lion." She pressed quill to reply, but words tangled. Joy, sorrow, guilt for surviving while others fell. She wrote, "I am safe. A scarred hound delivered me from lions. I pray you reward his courage if our paths cross again." She hesitated, realizing how meager a reward she could promise a man like Sandor. Gold? A keep? He would spit on both. She added, "He asks nothing, yet deserves a song." She sealed it and sent it on wings northward. A fortnight beyond, Sandor tracked the outlaw band that styled itself the Red Eagles. 20 men, deserters from the Battle of the Fords, now stealing grain and daughters along the Green Fork. Villagers hired him with what coin they scraped, promising more if he returned heads. He doubted they had more, but thirst for blood needed quenching. He scouted their camp at dusk, a ruined watchtower gutted by lightning. Fires dotted the courtyard inside the collapsed walls. Horses grazed tethered to brush. He counted sentries, 2 near the north breach, 1 patrolling the south. He crept to the loose stone and waited for mooncloud cover. When dark swelled, he slipped through. Inside, half the outlaws drank, half slept.
No discipline.
He stalked to the powder keg of their spirits. 3 barrels of wine pilfered from a merchant. He unstoppered one, spilled a trail along the dirt, circling tents. Another cloud draped the moon. He sparked flint. Flame danced along the wine, tongues licking canvas. Shouts lifted. Sandor darted through shadow, slitting throats of those who staggered blind from smoke. It became butchery. Firelight gilded steel. Screams echoed against ancient stone. By dawn, the red eagles were cinders in a ruin. Sandor looted the meager spoils. 2 silver cups, a dozen arrows, a fine leather jerkin too small for him, and loaded food sacks on stranger. When he rode back, the small folk gasped at the blood spatter dried on his half-helmed visage. He tossed their spokesman a bag of wheat and scraped off onyx ring he'd taken from the outlaw chief. "For you're dead," he said. They pressed blessings on him. He brushed off thanks. The village elder, a toothless crone, pressed an apple into his hand. "You've wolf's courage, but hound's heart. May the maiden smile on you, sir." "Not a night," he muttered, pocketing the fruit. He spent the night in a hayloft, dreams filled with smoke and Sansa's harp song. He woke angry that her memory lingered stronger than any he slew. He resolved to ride west tomorrow, chase coin in the Westerlands where battles raged between lion and wolf. Perhaps there he could bleed enough to forget doves and songs. Riverrun basked in summer's fade when news arrived. King Rob's host had taken the crag but lost the Kingslayer again, while Tywin marched east. Edmure paced ramparts like a haunted man, counting ravens. At dusk horns blasted, scouts sighting a Lannister vanguard on the south bank of the Red Fork. Panic trembled through refugees. Sansa volunteered to help Maester Vyman in the infirmary. She brewed willow bark tea, washed bandages, whispered comfort. One soldier, an archer from Seaguard, had lost both legs to a crossbow trap. He begged for his wife's name to be sent in a letter. Sansa wrote it, steady hand though tears pricked. He died brave. Each name she penned weighed her quill heavier. That night thunder rolled and torches fluttered along battlements. The Blackfish readied sorties. Edmure oversaw chain hoists. Sansa stood with them, while cloak whipping in the wind. She watched signal fires bloom like red stars across the valley, guiding Rob's outriders none could see. Fear tasted of iron on her tongue, same as wildfire smoke once had. She traced the dagger Sandor had given her, hidden beneath her belt. His weight calmed her. In the hush before midnight, river fog crept, thick as milk. From that cloak of silence came faint clink of oars. Tywin's men testing the currents. Archers knocked shafts, breath pluming. At Bryndon's order, flaming arrows soared, setting fog alight with falling constellations. Screams rose. The duel of siege began. Sansa withdrew to the inner ward but could not sleep. She roamed the library, fingers gliding over vellum spines. She chose the 7 Faces of War, an old tract by Septon Barth, and read by candle until dawn. One line struck. Mercy may bear sword's edge sharper than wrath, for mercy carves a wound in the self that bleeds without stanch. She closed the book, pondering Sandor, how the act of rescue carved him, though he would not name it mercy. On the road west, Sandor found war again. A company of Frey scouts rode by, boasting of marriage pacts and Lord Walder's cunning, mocking the young wolf who dared defy the twins' toll. Sandor spurred stranger ahead of them onto a narrow bridge, blocking passage. "Move, burned cur!" shouted a Frey captain. Sandor raised visor. 100 dragons coined to cross. "I'll pay you steel," they charged. He parried, ducked, hacked. Horses slipped on wet planks. Men tumbled into torrent below. He slew 3 before the rest fled upstream. Gold-starved same as men, the Freys left coin purses behind. He gathered them, muttering, "Toll accepted," With that silver, he purchased mail for Stranger's chest at a smith in Fairmarket and a new pair of gloves for himself, lambskin lined with cotton. The smith asked nothing of his scars. He respected Black Coin's language. Leaving Fairmarket, Sandor encountered a Septon herding refugees. They begged him to escort them north, offering prayers and onions. He nearly refused. Prayers filled no belly, but the youngest boy reminded him of the farm girls he'd freed. He rode ahead of the group, sword drawn whenever shadows shifted. For days thus, past fields raked by battle, until they reached the leagues-long camp outside Seagard. Northern banners whipped. Manderley Blue Merman, Karstark Sunburst, Meege Mormont's Roaring Bear. Here lingered families of soldiers, traders, scavengers. Sandor delivered the refugees to field wardens and took his onions. A horn sounded from the earthen rampart. Robb Stark himself rode the lines, colossal gray direwolf pacing at his stirrup. Sandor watched from afar. He thought of Sansa's desperation to see family, wondered if Robb read her letter. Did her plea for the Hound reach this camp? Did the king of Northmen spare thought for a Burnsell's word? Sandor doubted it and turned away, but fate curved. A Karstark outrider galloped toward him, breathless. "You, Clegane," his grace summons. Sandor weighed flight. Stranger could outrun most steeds, but curiosity pricked. He followed. They led him to a ring of pavilions striped in gray and white. Robb Stark awaited outside, helm under arm. He looked younger than rumor, barely a man, but his gaze held winter's firmness. "I know your face," Robb said. "You served Joffrey." "Served ale and fear," Sandor growled. "No longer. My sister writes you saved her. For that, I am in your debt." Sandor shifted, uneasy beneath gratitude. "She saved herself. I swung steel." Robb gestured him aside, away from ears. "I wish to send her north, but the way is perilous. Would you guard her?" The question shocked him silent. His mind flashed. Sansa behind Riverrun's walls, perhaps smiling at news of his return. Then fire, ships exploding, promises of escape. He clenched fists. "I'm no sworn shield," he said. "I charge coin. You shall have it, gold, land if we prevail." "Keep your keeps," Sandor spat. But memory of red flames licking the Blackwater returned, and Sansa's cool hand in his. He sighed. "I'll see her north if she'll have me. After that, my road's my own." Robb nodded. "You'll leave tomorrow with Catelyn, Brienne of Tarth, and an escort of 50. I trust you to keep them safe." Sandor snorted. "I trust no one, your grace." "Good," said the young wolf. "Neither do I." News of the escort lifted Sansa's spirits, though nerves fluttered. She dressed in traveler's garb, gray cloak lined with rabbit fur, leather boots, dagger at waist. When Sandor rode through Riverrun's gate amidst 50 Northmen, she stood by Ser Brynden, waiting. The Hound dismounted. He bore a new helm, plain steel without snarling dog, and a trimmed beard touched with gray. He looked older, wearier, yet his eyes brightened on seeing her unharmed. She stepped forward. They spoke without others hearing. "You came back," she said. "I'm mad," he answered. Tears pricked. She blinked them away. "We ride tomorrow? At dawn." He glanced at the escort. Brienne of Tarth towering in blue steel, Lady Catelyn Grave, a dozen Manderley riders, archers, healers, a wagon of supplies. North enough muscle to shame a bear. "Even so, I am glad you are here." He shuffled, muttering, "Don't be." That night they ate in Riverrun's hall. Candle glow painted Brienne's armor gold. Lord Edmure toasted safe passage. Sansa sang softly when asked, a northern dirge for fallen at the fords. Sandor listened from shadows, ale untouched. Her voice flowed steady, a river of ice and iron. He realized she no longer trembled before crowds. The bird now owned her song. They departed as first light dusted treetops with salmon pink. The escort crossed the Tumblestone, passed by Maidenpool's ruins, turned north along the King's Road's shattered spine. War's aftermath littered the miles. Broken siege carts, pikes snapped, armor left to rust. Catelyn kept the pace slow for supply wagons. Brienne scouted ahead. Sandor rode rear guard, eyes on the track behind. On the 5th day, they neared the crossing of the Trident where rubble from a collapsed bridge forced fording. Fog drifted, dampening sound. Sandor's neck hairs rose. He spurred ahead to Brienne. "Ambush," he muttered. She nodded, sword already drawn. Her blue cloak brushed his stirrup. Together they rode to Lady Catelyn, who signaled halt. Archers dismounted, knocked. Sansa's horse sidled. Sandor circled her. Shadows moved among willows on the far bank. A horn blast echoed. Arrow whistled, thudded into a shield. Then riders burst, armored men in crimson cloaks, a lion embroidered on their breast. A Lannister raiding party, perhaps scouts for Tywin. 30 at least. Sandor charged to meet them in the river shallows. His sword flashed, blocking a lance that splintered. Water churned around hooves. He slit the throat of the lancer, swung to parry another. Brienne waited alongside, two-handed greatsword cleaving arcs. She fought like wind in iron. Northman arrows fell like sleet, toppling enemies, but Lannister crossbowmen on the bank returned bolts. One struck a Manderly rider in the eye. Another thunked into Sandor's pauldron, glancing off. He growled. In the swirl, he glimpsed Sansa urging her horse back to a stand of rock. Lady Catelyn drew a half-circle of guards around her. Lannisters pressed, trying to break their shield wall. Sandor broke from his knot, splashing to intercept. He killed 2 before they reached her, cut another's thigh to the bone. The river turned red. 2 Lannisters gained the bank behind the escort, galloping to flank. Sansa saw them, shouted warning. Too far for swords to reach. Sandor seized a fallen spear, hurled it end over end. It lodged in one rider's chest, pitching him backward. Stranger reared, hooves striking the other's helm. Luck more than aim. The rider fell. Brienne finished him, sword crackling off steel. Within minutes, the ambush shattered. Survivors fled. Northmen gave cautious chase, then returned. 6 allies dead, a dozen wounded. Catelyn knelt by each fallen, whispering prayers. Sansa helped bind wounds, hands steady even as blood soaked her sleeves. When dusk settled, they camped in a copse beyond the ford. A ragged moon peered through branches. Sansa sat by the fire, washing blood from her hands. Sandor crouched beside, passing her a waterskin. "You fought," he said. "I only warned," she replied. "But I felt no fear." He grunted approval. Brienne joined them, kneeling. "You threw well, Clegane. Dogs fetch sticks," he said. Then the stick had teeth. Brienne smiled, rare and sincere. "You saved her." Sansa glanced between them. A small warmth bloomed at the camaraderie she had never thought possible. Burned dog and made of Tarth beside a wolf made by fire. 3 more weeks wound northward. They skirted Hag's Mire, crossed the neck on rickety causeways, paid toll to crannogmen who shimmered from moss cloaks. Sandor felt the air grow cooler, smelled pine and peat. Somewhere ahead lay Moat Caelin's desolation, and beyond it Winterfell, a castle now charred by Ironborn. Yet word drifted that the Greyjoy raiders had fled and Bolton men held the ruins, forging dark plots. Catelyn fretted, but pressed on. She intended to lodge Sansa at Deepwood Motte under Lady Glover until Robb reclaimed Winterfell. The Crannog guide led them through secret paths, avoiding Bolton patrols. One moonless night, Sandor took watch on a ridge overlooking a misted fawn. Frog croaks echoed. Stars scattered bright above. Beside him, Sansa sat wrapped in fur. "In King's Landing, I wished for the sky," she whispered. "I dreamed of the north. Yet now I near it, I fear what I'll find." He shrugged. "North remembers. Stones, roots. They'll hold till you're ready." She studied him. "What do you fear, Sandor?" His jaw worked. He could say fire, always fire, but tonight the flames of memory felt distant. "Fear is for children," he muttered. "Then I am still a child." He turned to look at her, candlelight from camp painting her features gold. Not a child, he realized. Not fully woman, but forged between lion's claws and wolf's teeth into something hard, resilient. The realization stirred a tenderness he had no words for. "I fear I'm less than I could be," he said at last. She touched his scarred cheek, light as thistledown. He flinched, not in pain but at the softness. "You are more than many nights," she said. "Still no night," he answered hoarse. "Then be a hound," she said. "But guard your own heart as fiercely as you guard me." He chuckled, low and rough. "Heart's a charred bone. Bones can bear new flesh," she said. Her hand fell, leaving warmth. They kept watch until sun's first gray washed the fawn. The Crannog guide emerged and gave word. Bolton outriders near Moat Cailin were hunting travelers. Best they veer east to the Barrowlands. Caitlin agreed. They broke camp. Sandor rode beside Sansa as dawn brig. Teened. Ahead stretched miles of wind-bent grass, barrow mounds like sleeping giants. Wolves howled in distance, a chorus to their journey. That afternoon they found the aftermath of a skirmish. Dead Bolton men in pink cloaks scavenged by crows. A banner bearing the flayed man lay in mud. Brienne prodded a corpse. "Arrows fletched in white weeping tree," she noted. "Crannogman ambush," Caitlin murmured. "The neck fights back." She bade a brief burial. They marched until twilight, reaching an abandoned holdfast perched on a knoll. The palisade sagged, but the watchtower still stood. Sandor inspected, found no threat. They sheltered inside. Sansa prepared oatcakes using lard and dried berries. She served Sandor last, placing a flat cake on his helm's turned-over bowl. "Eat," she ordered. He did, surprise at her assuming tone. She laughed. "A lady must command her shield." He snorted. Cracked shield, yet stronger for the cracks. Thunder rolled. Rain began. They talked little, the hush of drops filling gaps. Midnight brought nightmare. Sandor saw the Blackwater again, green flame blooming, Sansa trapped in a cage of bars glowing white. He lunged through fire, skin sloughing, but she dissolved into ash. He awoke shaking, sweat on brow though rain cooled the tower. Footsteps below, Sansa climbing the ladder. She paused as she saw his look. "Dreams?" she asked. "Nightmares." He wiped face. "Share them," she said. "Half a nightmare told is half a nightmare gone." He scoffed, but spoke. Fire, burning horse, smell of hair. She listened, eyes reflecting lightning flash. When he finished, breath ragged, she placed both hands on his. "You have carried that fire alone. Let the storm drown it for a while." Outside, rain hammered the wooden shutters. Thunder cracked. He realized the roar no longer stirred terror. Beside Sansa, fire's memory dimmed. He closed eyes, breathing scent of wet wood and her soap of lavender. At dawn, storm passed. They rode again. In the Barrowlands, Bolton patrols harried them thrice. The escort shrank. 2 wounded archers left at a village, 1 wagon lost to bog. Yet they pressed forward. Deepwood Motte loomed 3 days ahead. On a rocky hill, Sandor spotted banners on the horizon. Pink flayed man, yes, but also a red fox. A mixed force under Ramsay Snow, rumored bastard of Bolton. The Crannog guide paled. He hunts for stark blood. Sandor's stomach twisted. To face Ramsay with tired guards risked capture. He turned to Caitlin. "We split. A small party can slip past. My duties are to protect my daughter," she said. "And mine," Sandor growled. "Let me take her." Brienne spoke up. "I ride with him." Caitlin's eyes glimmered anguish. "Take 5 of the swiftest riders," she said at length. "I will lead the rest to Moat Cailin as distraction." Plans laid, farewells brief. Sansa hugged her mother tight. Caitlin stroked her hair. "North remembers," she whispered. "And so must you." Sandor guided Sansa and 5 riders, 2 archers, 3 spears, along deer trails east, skirting Bolton patrols. Each camp they moved by moon. On the second night, archers spotted fires ahead. Bolton scout camp. Sandor decided to pass to the west, But wind shifted. Dogs barked. Chase erupted. They fled through dwarf pines, hoofs flying. An arrow grazed Sandor's thigh. He ignored pain. The road dipped. Ahead loomed a ravine carved by snowmelt. Bridge collapsed. Sandor wheeled. "No time," he barked. "Down." They urged horses into the ravine. The descent steep, loose shale. Hooves slipped, but they reached a rocky wash and followed it until moon vanished behind cloud. Behind, Bolton horns blared, echoing off stone. A cave mouth yawned. The Crannig archer signaled hush. They entered. Darkness swallowed them. Sandor dismounted, led stranger. Farther in, a glow. Phosphorescent moss lit damp walls with green pallor. They found a cavern where a trickle of water fed a pool. Horses shivered but quieted. They waited. Horns receded. After an hour, silence. The archers slept in shifts. Sandor knelt at pool, cleaning the arrow graze, shallow, bleeding slow. Sansa approached, cloth in hand. She dabbed wound, tying linen strip. "You'll scar more," she said. "I'm a map of scars," he replied. "Each scar is a place you've survived." He touched bandage. "You, too, carry scars unseen. I will bear them." Her voice steady. He felt pride surge, pride and fear. She mattered now more than coin, more than his own life. He hated and cherished the truth. They talked low of Winterfell's godswood, of Arya's mischievous pranks, of Sandor's childhood before flame. For the first time, he told someone of the incident. Gregor pressing his face into the brazier, father's hush money, the silence thereafter. Tears stung, surprising him. Sansa placed palm on his scar. "Your pain is not shame." A noise startled, stone clatter at cave mouth. Sandor sprang, sword in hand. A figure limped in, cloak ragged. He raised blade, but the newcomer spoke the old tongue greeting of the north. Torchlight revealed a woman, face smudged, carrying a spear of driftwood tipped with dragonglass. A Crannig scout. "Bolton's past headed east," she said. "They hunt bigger prey." Sandor sighed relief. They slept then, exhaustion winning even fear. At dawn they climbed out of ravine via crumbling goat track. Beyond lay rolling hills where spruce marched. A chill nipped, autumn's advance. By noon they glimpsed Deepwood Mott's palisades, banners of House Glover, a silver mailed fist on blue. Horns saluted as riders approached, and gates swung wide. Lady Sibel Glover met them, white-streaked hair in braid, blade at hip. She embraced Sansa, eyes wet. "You are home, child of the North." Sansa nearly collapsed with gratitude. Sandor dismounted stiffly. Stable hands led stranger away. He watched Sansa ushered into the hall, where warmth glowed. He followed at distance. Inside, tables laden with stewed venison, black bread, turnips, honeyed mead. Sansa ate under Lady Glover's watch, face serene at last. Sandor leaned against a pillar, refusing chair. After feast, Sansa found him in courtyard. "You will stay, rest your wounds," she said. "I deliver the bird. Task done. But where will you go? Where road bends. Might find work guarding merchants. Might find ale." She inhaled. "I would ask you to remain as my sworn shield. I told your brother, no night vows." "Not vows," she said. "Choice." He rubbed scar. "I don't belong in keeps. You belong where you choose," she insisted. "If that is far roads, I will not cage you. Only know you have a hearth here." He met her gaze, unflinching blue ice. A hearth, the word curled warm. He nodded gruffly. "For a time, then." She smiled, relief washing. She reached into cloak, pulled the lock of hair he'd given. "I kept my ghosts." She pressed it to his palm. "But ghosts weigh less when shared." He closed fingers around the auburn strands. "I'll guard them." She rose on toes, kissed his scarred cheek. Soft. He froze. A breath between. Then she withdrew. "Rest, Sandor." He watched her ascend tower stairs, gray cloak billowing. The courtyard lanterns winked to life. Dusk purpled the sky. He stood long, feeling the phantom of her lips, feeling something in his chest shift. a bone unbroken yet set anew, weeks smoothed into routines. Sandor oversaw patrols along wolfswood paths, drilling green boys with rusted spears until arms shook. He taught them to strike for belly, twist, never hesitate. Word spread, a burnt hound training a northern pack. He earned ration of meat, a cot near stables, silence enough. Sansa spent days with Lady Sibel, learning account ledgers, grain tallies, letters of alliance. At night she sang in the great hall. Log fires roared. Villagers gathered, children clapping. Sandor lurked in shadows, mug in hand. Sometimes she caught his eye mid-verse, warmth sparking. Snow fell early that year, first soft kisses, then blankets. Deepwood's walls gleamed white. Patrols shortened. One morning Sansa walked the ramparts and found Sandor watching flurries swirl. "First snow," she said. "First fire's friend," he answered, touching scarf she knitted him. "Wool dyed forest green. Winter will be long," she said. "We'll endure." She smiled. "Together." He nodded. Below them, the wood quietly buried the scars of war under new snow. Pines bowed, rivers slowed, and the world drew a breath before harder trials. But in that pause, a maiden of snow and a hound of flame shared the wall, and the North remembered not just pain but the mercy of a single night when a dog carried a bird through fire and into flight. The wind carried scents of pine resin and distant hearths. Sandor breathed deep. The flames inside flickered low, tamed at last, while somewhere in Deepwood's hall a harp awaited Sansa's fingers. He would listen tonight, he decided, and perhaps the stone dog in the song would learn that spring's promise lay not only in ending winter, but in choosing to stay until winter's end. And so daylight faded, leaving torchlight to dance against snow. The hound turned from the battlement, walked beside the Lady of Winter's Hope, and felt the road at last grow still beneath his weary boots. The warm days ended in a hush of white. Snow crept across Deepwood moat like a patient tide, filling the ruts between the palisade stakes, cloaking every black fir bough, softening the ruin of years of war until it looked less like scar and more like slumber. By mid-autumn the drifts reached Sandor Clegane's knees, and every breath made ghosts. The Hound of King's Landing had become a creature of the north, wrapped in wolf fur and oiled leather, yet still he felt the cold and the burned scars that webbed his face, as if the fire he feared had been frozen there, locked beneath the skin to ache whenever wind blew out of the shivering sea. He rose before dawn each morning, cleared the training yard with a wooden shovel, and drilled Lady Glover's garrison beneath lanterns of crumbling ice. The boys called him Sir Snowdog when they dared, though never to his face. The veterans merely watched the way he moved. A big man's power translated into a hunter's precision, then copied him in silence. It pleased him to see their shields knit tighter every week, their sword arms lose the clumsy flourish of tourney style in favor of quick, brutal cuts. A shield wall could stand a charge. A faint happy lordling could not. Sandor knew what was coming. Bolton men would scour the bar rollins once the snows packed enough for sleighs, and when they came, they would sniff for Stark blood. Sansa Stark felt it too. She no longer dreamed of the South, nor of colored silks and courtly dances. The songs she sang by the hearth were old northern lays that tasted of pine sap and iron, or a field sown with frozen tears. She spent daylight in Lord Galbart Glover's solar, poring over ledgers, measuring grain stores, plotting which river fords would freeze first, tracing the slow creep of Ramsay Snow's banners on every crude map the scouts returned. At night she walked the watch path, gray cloak blending with moonlit stone, and spoke with the sentries one by one, asking their names, their wives, their sons. She wrote each detail on scraps of parchment and filed them in a birchwood chest, for she meant to remember these men if they bled for her. Sometimes those night patrols ended atop the eastern rampart where Sandor usually sat alone, helm across his lap, studded boots dangling over the drop. He would nod, wordless, and she would tuck her gloved hands beneath her arms, huddling against the wind. They seldom spoke more than a sentence or two, but quiet stretched comfortably between them. Once she asked, "Did you ever imagine you might guard a frozen keep?" He snorted steam and said, "I imagined worse." Another night she said, "I used to wish for snows like this when the red keep stank of summer rot." He answered, "Snow's prettier when you're not dying in it," then placed his wolf fur cloak around her shoulders without looking and returned to silence. The next evening she brought 2 tin cups of mulled wine instead of 1. Deepwood slept on as December edged toward the new year, until the raven came. The bird arrived at dawn, black wings scattered with frost, and landed on the maester's sill shrieking for hot corn. Around its leg, a ribbon the sickly pink of flayed flesh. Maester Tothmer's trembling fingers cracked the Bolton seal. By midday the message lay unfurled on Lady Glover's council table beneath 7 pairs of eyes. Sibel Glover, Maester Tothmer, 2 senior captains, Sansa, Sandor, and the maester's dim-witted page who kept spilling ink but refused to miss a word. Ramsay Snow's words were written in a hand too neat for a bastard. To the traitors harboring the false daughter of Eddard Stark. Return the girl Sansa and her dog to Winterfell or I will march. Flay every soul within your walls, and leave your trees hung with skins to warm the crows. The North is mine by royal decree. Obey or be unmade. Signed in blood, Ramsay Bolton, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North. ***. There was blood indeed. A thumbprint pressed crimson beside his name. Sibel Glover's jaw tightened until the scar near her ear whitened. She set the raven's parchment atop a candle flame. The bastard's threats curled, blackened, and drifted to ash on the stone. When she spoke her voice was iron. "We do not yield Starks to flayers." The captains muttered agreement, one thumping a mailed fist on the oak. But eyes slid sidelong to Sandor, then to Sansa. No one voiced the thought that hung between the rafters. Ramsay might come here first not only for the girl but for the dog whose axe or sword had stung enough Lannisters to earn tall tales from the twins to Fairmarket. Flayed stories traveled fast on cold air. Sansa stood straighter. "My Lord Father taught me a Stark repays courage with courage. I will not cower behind these walls while others bleed. I must reclaim Winterfell or die in the attempt."
Sie längse ran.
The captains exchanged doubts. Deepwood held barely 300 blades that could march. Bolton levies, when they mustered, dwarfed that by tenfold. And winter had only now shown her gentlest teeth. Sandor leaned a hip against the wall, arms crossed. "You take the castle, how? Storm it with polite letters? Bastards got 10 times your men and tall walls." She met his stare. "I have allies south and east. Manderleys, mountain clans, perhaps the Vale. If we move before Ramsay consolidates, we can bind them beneath one banner. March the girl around the north like a prize mare and hope no arrow finds her first." He scoffed. "Yes," she said, and he paused at the steel under the word. Her voice softened. "I would ask you to ride with me, Sandor. Not as shield, but as friend." Friend. He tasted the word like strange wine. It warmed places wildfire never touched. He glanced at Sibel. The Lady of Deepwood lifted a brow. She would not command him either way. "Dogs got fleas," he muttered. "But fleas bite Boltons too." He turned to the map. "White Harbor's your start. Lord Wyman loves a feast more than war, but he loves the Starks like gravy. Show him your face, he'll pledge boats." Sansa smiled, relief blossoming in her cheeks. "Then to White Harbor we go." Preparations swallowed a fortnight. Snow-shod horses were shodder still with iron spikes. A sleigh of dried meats, oatcakes, and spruce saplings for firewood was packed. Ravens flew bearing letters punched with the direwolf seal. To Lady Mormont on Bear Island, to Barbary Dustin at Barrowton, though that one Sansa doubted would help, to Galbart Glover at the Wolfswood Edge where he harried Bolton scouts. Each message carried 3 words stamped in wax. "The North remembers." On the morning of departure, dawn bruised the sky purple. A column of 30 riders lined the gate. 10 of Deepwood's best bowmen, 5 pikemen with axes strapped to saddle. For woodsmen who could outpace Shadow, Maester Tothmer's page; for letters, Sandor, Lady Sansa, and 2 hulking Mormont women who had arrived by skiff with a note from Lyanna Mormont. "Bear Island stands with the she-wolf. Send my sisters as claws." Their names were Daisy and Jarell, and each wielded a great axe taller than Tothmer's page. Sibel Glover took Sansa's hands at the gate. "Bring us word when the Manderleys kneel. If Deepwood must ride, we ride on your drum." She pressed a small bronze knife into Sansa's palm, Bronze Age, a first men relic with stylized weirwood leaves etched along the blade. "For heart trees or heart's blood," she said. Snowflakes sifted down as they trotted into the wolflands. The wind whistled around Sandor's helm slits. It smelled of cedar pitch and distant sea. Sansa rode beside him atop a silver mare named Frostfall. She wore boiled leather armor dyed ash gray, a short sword at her hip, the bronze dagger hidden at her boot. Her auburn hair had grown to her jawline. She let it lie loose under a fur cap. The first days were gentle, frostbright mornings, nights around small fires banked in pits dug through the snow to damp earth. Sandor stood watch while the others slept, his silhouette a monolith against the northern lights that rippled green across the night vault. Yet peace never settled. Always he felt the invisible hand of winter tightening its glove. On the 6th day they reached the King's Road where it bent east toward the shore. Storm clouds rolled in from the Bay of Ice, and by afternoon a gale drove snow horizontal, stinging cheeks raw. They pressed on, cloaks snapping like banners. At dusk they located a deserted holdfast. For walls still stood, though the roof had sagged inward from rot. A crooked chimney jutted like a broken finger. Inside, the hearth remained serviceable. Sandor, Daisy Mormont, and 2 bowmen scavenged plank wood and old straw. By nightfall the chimney belched smoke that smelled of mold and pine. Sansa warmed her hands at the blaze, eyes reflecting flame. She shot Sandor a wry smile. "I should fear fire after Blackwater." He shrugged. "Fire cooks meat. Men fear what eats them, not what feeds them." Thunder boomed. The roof groaned. They piled blankets. Half the company slept while half sat listening for the shriek of Bolton horns on the blizzard wind. None came, but just before dawn, Daisy's shout jerked Sandor awake. The front wall bowed inward under weight. "Snow? No." He heard hooves stamp, wood crack. "A ram?" Sandor seized sword, shoved the wall plank aside, peered through driving flakes. 3 riders in flayed man cloaks circled, axes chopping at the door bar. One spotted him, loosed a quarrel, skittered off his helm, sparked stone. Sandor roared, busted the door with shoulder, barreled into the storm before reason quieted. The first Bolton nearly lost his head to the charge. Sandor's sword hacked deep into collar muscle. The rider tumbled screaming. The second wheeled, raising a mace. Sandor's boot jammed a stirrup, yanking the foe sideways. He stabbed through chainmail throat. The third fled. Arrows hissed past Sandor's ears. Deepwood bowmen on the roofline had found perches through broken shingles. A shaft embedded in the fleeing man's spine. He pitched forward, vanishing into drifts. When the storm cleared at noon, they discovered tracks of 7 more horses converging on the holdfast before the attack. Advance scouts for a larger host. Sansa gathered the company around the hearth smolder. "If they ride to White Harbor before us, Lord Wyman will think us dead," she said. "We cut cross-country," Sandor answered. He pointed on the map to a series of Rosin lakes. "Leave the road. Follow the ice to the Wolf's Mouth. Quicker. Riskier if thaw hides weak spots." "It is midwinter," Daisy argued. "Ice thick as castle stone." "Then we skate," Sandor said. They left the King's Road that evening, plunging into a forest of spruce where snow hung so heavy the boughs sagged to shoulder height. Often they had to dismount and lead horses single file, breaking trail with axes, breath pluming like dragon steam. On the second lake, near dusk, a crack spidered under the right rear leg of their supply sleigh. The horse reared. The sleigh lurched. Sandor flung his weight to the left trace, distributing burden, while the Mormont sisters hauled at the yoke. Ice held, but they marched slower, ears trained for the groan that heralded collapse. 2 nights later in camp, as the aurora unfurled ribbon green overhead, Sansa found Sandor sharpening his sword on a flat river stone. She knelt beside him, offering a slice of dried pear. He hesitated, then took it, surprising them both when he said, "Southron treat, from a Glover storehouse. Pears keep well in honey." She watched him chew, jaw working like a forge bellows. When we reach White Harbor, what will you do if Lord Wyman offers you knighthood? He spat a seed. Same as last time someone tried. Say worse things than fleas. She brushed snowflakes from her glove. A title could protect you from men who call you dog. Let them call. Name means nothing besides steel and boots. Names can build walls stronger than boots. Stark, Bolton, Glover, all names. She studied the scar across his cheek. Perhaps you could build your own wall. He held her gaze, eyes dark under torch flare. I've walls enough inside. She placed a mittened hand on his elbow. I hope someday you open a gate. Words stuck in his throat. He ground sword edge until sparks leapt, and the conversation ended on that glimmer. They sighted White Harbor on the 15th morning. Towers of pale granite capped by snow, smoke curling from 100 chimneys. The harbor an oval slab of ice save a channel kept open by fisherboats whose prows crushed weak frost before dawn each day. The Wolf's Den, oldest keep in the city, brooded atop its rocky island, banners of the mermen snapping green and white. And above the main gate, unfurled newly since the Bolton's rise, flew a gray direwolf stitched on seafoam cloth. When Sansa saw the sigil, she sagged in her saddle and whispered, "He remembers." Inside the walls, harpists announced her arrival with a flourish that echoed off ivory-faced houses lining the merman's court. Lord Wyman Manderley greeted her personally at the marble steps of Newcastle, vast, heavy-jowled. His chin nested in furs, though his eyes shone bright as a seal's. "Lady Sansa, the wolf's blood returns." He bowed despite girth. "Come, eat, thaw, and tell us how you mocked the flayer's blades." The feast lasted into moonrise. Long tables groaned under roast swan, honey-glazed haddock, mounds of buttered turnips, and a monstrous three-tier pie shaped like a lighthouse, windows carved where gravy oozed. Musicians played beneath crystal chandeliers. The Manderley court laughed each time the portly lord called Ramsay Snow an ill-bred whelp. Sandor sat near the wall, chewing mutton, ignoring a serving girl's wary glances at his face. He studied the room. 24 Manderley guards in green steel, an equal number of house knights, no Bolton spies in sight but plenty of merchants who might carry tales. Sansa was radiant at the high table, speaking of Deepwood's stand, of ravens gone to Bear Island and the mountain clan chiefs, of her hope to call a northern moat and elect a Lord Paramount until King Rob marched home. She never once asked Lord Wyman for armies, yet with each word the fat man's fingers drummed faster on the table edge, and his mind, Sandor guessed, tallied the honor he might regain by backing a true wolf. When the musicians paused, Wyman rose, goblet raised. The north bled when Winterfell burned. Tonight the blood flows homeward. I pledge ships, coin, and these walls to Lady Sansa Stark until her brother's crown returns or the others walk our hearths. Let all men who call themselves Northborn hear it. Cheers rattled antler chandeliers. Sansa's eyes shone, but she said only, "The North remembers." Voice steady as carved ice. Later by a lesser hearth, while torches guttered and guests dozed in wine haze, Wyman summoned Sansa and Sandor to a private solar painted with scenes of Merling's wrestling krakens. Only a single guard and the maester accompanied. Here Wyman's jovial smile faded. "Bolton Ravens circle," he admitted. "Ramsay demands taxes and a hostage. He fears you'll raise White Harbor against him, which of course I will. But I must move warily until I secure certain bonds." "Bonds?" Sansa asked. "Your brother's crown is far to the west." Barrowton trembles. "Yet another Stark lives, one unbroken by war's wheel. Your brother Rickon." He paused, watching her face. "A sailor of mine claims the boy is held by the cannibals of Skagos." Sansa's breath caught. She thought Rickon lost when Theon Greyjoy sacked Winterfell. Stories tangled between flayed fables and ironborn boasts. "If he lives, I would fetch him." Wyman tapped a chart. "Skagos sits beyond sea lanes, reefs sharper than a merman's tooth. Few captains dare. I can spare one stout galley, but I need someone fierce aboard, else the Skagosi will feast on hearts." He looked at Sandor then. "They say cannibals fear burnt flesh as cursed." Sandor grunted. "They'll fear steel more." "Will you sail?" Wyman asked him. "The lady cannot risk her own capture. She'll remain here rallying the clans. But a hound might sniff a wolf pup where knights cannot." Sansa touched Sandor's elbow. "I would not ask you after all you've done." He studied her hand, slender against russet velvet. "You don't ask. You need." Wyman's maester produced a parchment. 6 days hence, the galley Blue Fork departs on the morning tide.
Sandor met Sansa's kees.
He thought of roaring fires and drowned dreams, of Blackwater Bay and a dove in cages. "I'll sail," he said. "If pup lives, I'll haul him home. If not, I'll bring back the truth." Sansa exhaled, half grief, half gratitude. "Come back whole." He attempted a crooked smile. "I'm never whole." They clasped wrists. No courtly kiss, just a soldering of intent. Wyman poured a toast of spiced rum. "To Skagos then," he boomed, "and to the return of wolves." Preparation spun like mill wheels. Sansa drafted letters commanding mountain clans to muster under Deepwood's standard come first spring melt. She sewed a direwolf banner herself with thread the color of dawn ice. Sandor oversaw loading of salt pork, freshwater casks, coils of tarred rope, spare sails. He met the Blue Fork's captain, Rorik Redbeard, a squat Northman with walrus mustache and laugh like a foghorn. "Sail with axe, dog," Rorik said. "Skagos folk barter in blood." On the eve of departure, snow fell in fat flakes. Sansa found Sandor on the quay, standing sentinel beside the galley as sailors secured spars. Orange lantern light glazed his helm's pitted steel. She stepped close, breath curling between them. "You saved me once from fire," she said. "Now you sail into ice. I fear losing you to the sea." "Seas kinder than kings," he answered. "Doesn't flay you alive first." She pressed something into his glove, a small leather pouch. Dried weirwood leaves from the bronze knife's handle. "For luck." He tucked it inside his jerkin. "Keep your luck. Feed your people. Come back and I will." A gust whipped her cloak. She reached, touched his wrist, and before courage cooled, she rose on toes and kissed his unscarred cheek. The gesture felt neither courtly nor romantic. It was a daughter of the North blessing her chosen champion. Yet it sent heat flaring under his skin hotter than any hearth. He stepped back, gaze shadowed. "Stay sharp, little bird. I'm a she-wolf now," she reminded, smile fierce. "Then let the world hear you howl." At dawn, the Blue Fork slipped her moorings, oars churning black water between ice floes. Sansa watched from the wolf's den tower until the galley shrank to a dot beyond the harbor mouth, swallowed by mist rolling off the shivering sea. In her heart fluttered hope and dread in equal measure. She turned inland. Work awaited, councils, ravens, speeches to clan chiefs she had yet to charm. Winterfell's stones called across leagues of snow, silent, wounded, waiting. She breathed cold air deep, tasting salt and pine together, and felt the ancient land listening. "The North remembers," she whispered to the white gulls wheeling above the quay. Then she strode down the tower steps, cloak billowing like storm clouds gathering behind a dawn sun. The Blue Fork pitched over gray swells, its prow carved as a leaping trout whose eye had been inlaid with amber. Sandor stood near the bow, one hand wrapped about the stay, the other clutching his cloak against razor wind. Salt stung his burned scars, yet he welcomed the ache. It kept thought sharp. Behind him the crew sang a shanty about the bottom of the sea, voices deep as anchor chains. Rorik Redbeard emerged from the hatch, hair stiff with brine. "Wind's turning," he shouted above the gulls. "If it holds, we make Skagos in 3 days." "Aye," Sandor muttered. He watched clouds pile black on the eastern rim. Storm coming. Good. Storm might hide them from Bolton longships that patrolled the coast for smugglers. He checked the leather pouch at his belt, Sansa's dried leaves. Superstition, yet he liked their crunch when he pinched one between thumb and knuckle, like brittle bones of enemies he had yet to kill. That night the storm struck. Waves mounted, slate monsters capped with foaming fangs. The galley climbed, shuddered, plunged into valleys where water slapped deck rails. Sailors swore, hauled lines. Sandor lashed himself to a mast ring, boots sliding on slick planks. Lightning cracked lavender above. Thunder chased. He recalled wildfire's roar, yet the ocean's wrath felt clean, without malice, merely immense. He closed his eyes and let salt spray baptize the dog that had feared flame since boyhood. At dawn, the gale eased. They sighted dark crags piercing mist, Skagos. The island's name in the old tongue meant stone, and stone it looked. Jagged cliffs trimmed with pine clumps like patchy beards. No sandy beaches, only fissures where surf boomed. Rorik guided the ship into a sheltered cove hidden behind a leaning sea stack. Anchors dropped with hollow clanks. They lowered a boat. Sandor, Rorik, and 5 oarsmen rowed through kelp mats to a shingle where black pebbles clicked under each incoming wave. Snow dusted the shore above high tide. Tracks of goats, or something goat-like but larger, webbed the sand before vanishing into spruce shadows. Rorik sniffed. "Unicorns roam here," he whispered. "Horns sharp as lances." Sandor grunted. "Point me to the 2-legged beasts first." They followed a deer path up a ravine where icy water cascaded. At a cleft, runes carved into basalt depicted skulls within flame. Rorik crossed himself. Cannibal signs. Beyond, the path opened on a plateau scattered with stone huts roofed in sod. Smoke curled from 2. The rest stood charred, as if lightning or raiders had burned them. Vultures perched on broken rafters.
Sandor smelt rot.
A figure stepped from a doorway. A woman, skin white as moonstone, hair braided with bone beads, wearing a cloak of unicorn hide. A spear tipped by obsidian glimmered. Her eyes were as pale as glacial pools. She studied the stranger's expression blank. Rorik spoke the trade tongue, sprinkling words with Skagosi grunts. She replied in halting common. "You come from mainland. Want boy wolf." Sandor stiffened.
Rickon stark.
"He lives." She lifted the spearhead toward the sea. "Boy hides in Watcher's caves. Many spirits. Few men dare. Take me." She shook head. "Price." Rorik produced iron knives, a jar of honey, a bolt of green wool. She glanced at each, unimpressed, until her gaze halted on Sandor's sword. A Valeman forge blade taken from a knight he slew near the Blackwater, its bronze inlay faintly visible on the guard. "Steel for bones," she said. Sandor hesitated. The blade was fine, balanced, but he unbelted it, offered hilt first. She accepted, testing edge with thumb, nodding when blood welled. "Come." They trekked inland under spruce gloom, snow muffling footsteps. In a narrow gorge they passed standing stones etched with entwined serpents devouring children. Wind moaned through gaps like lamenting ghosts. The woman guided them around a sinkhole where goat skulls ringed the rim, horns painted red. At sunset they reached a cliff whose face was pocked with cave mouths like black eyes. Torches flickered within the central opening. Voices drifted. The deep barks of dogs, a boy's high laugh. Sandor's chest tightened. The Skagosi woman whistled thrice. Silence fell. Then a shaggy direwolf pup, the size of a small bear, emerged, gray fur bristling, snarling. Behind it padded a girl of perhaps 12 with cloud-white hair and mismatched eyes, one blue, one brown. She carried a spear. "Girl child of Gilly clan," the woman said. "Wolf boy's pack sister." The girl studied Sandor. "You smell like burnt pine." He huffed. "Smell worse things." He knelt, palms open.
I'm Sandor.
"I come for Rickon." "Rick's sleeping. Long hunt." She whistled. The direwolf relaxed, sniffing Sandor's gauntlet. A beast nearly as tall at the shoulder as he kneeling. His breath fogged. Gilly girl motioned them inside. The cave opened into a vaulted chamber where stalactites glittered in torchlight. Furs padded the floor. Near a fire pit lay a boy of about 7, tangled brown curls, cheeks smudged. He stirred as they approached, blinking amber eyes. "Who?" he asked through a yawn. Sandor swallowed. The pup had grown, feral, but the eyes were pure stark. "Your sister Sansa sent me," he said. "I'm taking you home." "Home burn?" Rickon muttered, clutching a wooden sword. Smell gray men at home. Winterfell will rise again, Sandor said. Your blood raises it. Come. The boy considered, then scrambled upright, barefoot on cold stone, unfazed. Shaggy come too. He whistled. The dire wolf trotted close. Sandor's gut clenched, but he held still. The beast nudged Rickon's hip. The Skagosi woman demanded more price for passage back down the mountain, a second sword or gold. Rorik offered a bag of salt. She spat. Sandor unclasped his wolf fur cloak. Fire's kiss on it, he growled. She accepted, intrigued by the burn marks across inner lining. The descent to the boat was slow. Rickon astride the direwolf half the way, rain of powder snow slipping from branches overhead. At shore, the Blue Fork's longboat waited. Crew gaped at Shaggy Dog's size. One crossed himself repeatedly, but they let the beast clamber aboard, the hull rocking. As oars dipped, Sandor sat amidships. Rickon curled against his side, sharing a fleece blanket. The boy toyed with a carved weirwood figurine of a direwolf. Moonlight shimmered on Blackwater. Sandor gazed sternward at Skagos receding into mist. Faint drums beat from cliffs, farewell or warning. He touched the leather pouch of leaves. Luck, he thought, or a wolf-maid's faith. For the first time he believed he might live to see Winterfell's gates again, not as exile nor Sellsword, but as something the North itself had chosen to carry its flame. White Harbor's bells tolled noon when the Blue Fork sailed into harbor 3 weeks later, tattered yet triumphant. Crowds thronged the quay as word spread that a direwolf prowled her deck. Sansa pushed through, heart hammering. She saw Sandor first, leaner, beard salted with frost, cloak of patched sailcloth around shoulders. Then Rickon burst from behind his legs, wild curls bouncing, Shaggy Dog leaping to the plank. She cried out, dropping decorum, sprinted. Rickon collided with her, arms thin but strong. They sank to their knees on planks dusted white with salt snow, hugging, laughter choking with tears. Shaggy Dog circled, tail thudding, tongue lolling. Sandor stepped aside, uncomfortable. Yet when Sansa rose, tears silvering lashes, she reached for his hand. She did not speak gratitude. Her eyes said more than any vow. He squeezed once, then withdrew. Lord Wyman waddled forward, breathless. Wolves multiply. He boomed at the harbor. The North shall have its pack. That night White Harbor feasted again, but the laughter carried iron beneath. With Rickon's survival public, Bolton legitimacy cracked. Messages flew under secrecy to Bear Island, Wolfswood, even the Vale where rumor whispered of a Falcon Lord nursing old debts to the Lannisters. By firelight Sansa and Sandor bent over new maps, plotting which passes opened first after spring thaw, where grain wagons might travel under escort of bears and mermen and mountain goats in boiled leather. Rickon slept near the hearth, Shaggy Dog his pillow, a carved wooden horse in hand. Near midnight Sansa poured Sandor a cup of dark ale. Home feels closer, she murmured. Closer means harder fought, he said. Will you march when we do? He met her gaze. Till Bolton's banners burn, I stay. She touched his scar lightly. You found a gate. He shrugged, but did not step away. Maybe a crack. She smiled, wolf and dove together. The fire popped. Outside, snow fell softer than before, as if winter itself paused to watch young wolves gather strength. Somewhere in the dark between Deepwood's pines and Winterfell's broken walls, other fires guttered, and men in pink cloaks shivered at tales told by their scouts. Of a burnt hound who walked through storms, of a she-wolf raising banners, and of a boy-pup returned from the dead riding a black-furred shadow with green eyes like burning summer. The night deepened, plans forged, loyalties threaded, and high above White Harbor, the aurora washed pale green over ice clouds, shimmering like a banner sewn from wind and promise, an omen that the long winter would not consume the North without hearing, at last, the full-throated howl of all its wolves returned.